Some development sites look incredible at first glance. Big block, good suburb, attractive price. But experienced developers know that some of these deals are actually traps, and the warning signs are often hidden in plain sight. Welcome back to Inside Property Development. Today I'm joined by Gav from our site acquisition team, who reviews potential development deals every single day. In this episode, we're going to break down the types of sites that often look great but rarely work, the red flags developers immediately watch for, and the biggest trap beginners fall into when buying development sites. Let's get into it. All right, Gav, this one is right in your wheelhouse. What types of sites, I guess, can look attractive and trick people and actually be traps?
Oh, I was this person about 20 odd years ago when I started to read the books, and you go to a couple of seminars and you just start driving around. Yeah, you're driving to work and you drive past a cleared site, 800 square meters, dead flat, and you think, oh mate, there's so much money to be made there. Yeah. Here we go. But the reality is, once you start to dig a bit deeper, there are plenty of things that can trip that up. And as we know, the market here in Victoria has been really, really tight. So you've really got to be on the ball and try and find every red flag you can. And as you know, I'm a bit of a pessimist, and I find it easier to find things that don't work than things that do work. And when something really does stack up well, I'm thinking, okay, I missed something here. So it is very, very easy to look at a development site and just think all the boxes are ticks before you get too far down the track. Yeah,
I totally agree. And especially when people are sort of in that mind frame and they do want to move forward with something, and the approval or the money might be burning a hole in their pocket, so they want to transact, they want to rock and roll, they want to be a developer. So that can be a bit of an issue as well, because sometimes they just see the good and not see the bad. Do we want to roll through some of the issues that early beginner developers maybe underestimate, Gav? So maybe they see these issues, but they underestimate the impact they can have on their project.
All right, well, you know me, I'm a numbers guy, I'm a feasibility guy. I got over the whole emotional movement part of development after the first development and realised it just comes down to numbers. But as you ask, there are key things you got to look for. So most importantly, it's things we do talk about quite a bit on this podcast, and that is trees, understanding local council areas, so trees, shadowing over private open space, and primarily now as well, the Victorian, I guess, Res Code guidelines have been eased a bit. There's a much better system in place. So your zoning it's still important, but it's not the main thing. Where you can be tripped up is understanding the overlays for that particular area. And there's obvious ones like heritage and things like that, which we steer clear of. And even special building overlays with water egress and things like that, which can affect your design and cost. But there's also other design development overlays you've got to be very careful with as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like you say, the overlays are still there for councils to slow us down and maybe pull us back. So, like you said, the system has been streamlined a bit. It's presenting more black and white, which is nice, but avoiding those overlays is super important. And for people not convincing themselves that she'll be right, I'll push through, there's a bit of discipline in there to find the site that is a bit cleaner from an overlay perspective.
That's right. You've really got to work through all these preliminary things that we talk about, but having, I guess, your relationship with your designer and even through spending time looking at sites yourself, talking to councils yourself, you get to understand these design development overlays. Particularly like if you're in a leafy suburb, you can read deep in, a few paragraphs in, depending on which version of the overlay it is. You might only be able to have a single dwelling. You might only be able to have a certain style design front. You might only be able to do a front to back design. You might not be able to do a side by side design. So you've got to be very, very careful. And it's not always obvious.
No, 100%. And I think what you touched on earlier, and we talk about it a lot, building out the right team, because as a developer, even a seasoned developer versus someone that's just getting into the game, having those experts around you that actually specialize in whether it's overlays and, whether you're getting your title looked over and seeing covenants or any other restrictions, having your experts placed around you, I think is super important, because as a developer, you're not going to know it all. You're going to be a bit of a jack of all, master of none, but having those experts around you to sometimes, you give you a hit with the reality stick, I think is important.
Yeah, look, if it's your designer as well, you may have a height restriction. So yes, you can do a double-storey dwelling, a townhouse development, but if you've got a height restriction for shadowing next door neighbour, then that might impact your design a lot. So, and another example would be, we like Murrumbina. Some beautiful leafy streets in that area. There's also sort of a nice strip of parkland as well. And if it just might be just one street back from that park, within that pocket, you can only do a single dwelling.
Yeah.
So it's not staring you in the face, but you've really got to sort of open up that design overlay and read through it carefully.
Yeah, 100%. So we're sort of talking about, I guess, some challenges with red tape that can slip you up. What about once we sort of get through that and it's looking good on Land Checker and there's not many overlays, what are the things you go to and the red flags you seek out when it comes to doing your due diligence on the site?
Yeah, you've got your obvious ones, your trees, but then you've got to be very, very careful with shadowing private open space. The new Res Code has made some things easier, but it was also caused some other restrictions as well. So you've got to be careful with that, talking to your designer. So in addition to that, you're looking at your easements, shadowing, I mentioned, slope as well. Slope is a deal killer, particularly as we were saying before, it is a tight market. So, it can be challenging to find profit. And if you've got 2 meters, say 3 meters of fall across a site, even diagonally across a site, you're up for potentially 100 grand plus in additional earthworks and retaining walls. But then how does that impact your resales as well? And all of a sudden, you might have a project where you're looking at 400 grand profit. All of a sudden you only got 200 grand, and that's if everything goes all right.
I feel like slope can be a bit of a silent killer, because appreciating how much slope on a site, especially, you're looking in a brownfield area where there's already a house on it and it sort of looks like it's dealing with it okay, but when you strip it all back and you appreciate how many retaining walls need to go in, like you said, does it impact the design? Are we adding steps into the design? All these sorts of things can hurt your budget, and it'll cost you more to build. But then from a resale perspective, is it being is it having an impact on its price?
Yeah, look, the question is, are you targeting downsizers or retirees doing a single level house, no steps? They really like that. You might be doing a single level side by side somewhere, right? So they don't want too much backyard, but they want to have their little veggie patch and easy to maintain, and they don't want steps because their knees just can't handle it anymore. But then you go and buy a site that's got 1.5 meters of fall across it. All of a sudden you've got to introduce a set of stairs halfway through the dwelling, and that's going to impact your resales. Another one as well is, as you say, a silent killer, are solar panels.
Yeah.
So if your neighbouring property has got a bank of solar panels on their roof close to the boundary, and they're on the eastern side, so the western sun, or even the southern side, any side really is a risk. But those predominant sides, and you want to build a double-storey dwelling, if you're shadowing those solar panels, the council's going to have something to say about it. Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree more. And that's in recent times, as obviously power and energy has become our fuel of choice. It's definitely something of recent times, but to the untrained eye, it looks okay, it looks fine. But shadowing can be a beast once you get your shadowing diagrams done. And appreciate at certain times of the day how big a shadow you are casting. Getting dialed in with that. And that's, again, having the right team around you, with having the designer that is very savvy on going, okay, we either are or aren't going to be shadowing.
It can have a major impact to your upper levels in your dwelling. So sure, you may still be able to build and you can do a double-storey dwelling, but your side setback on that particular side could be reduced by 2 meters even.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the space you've got to build upstairs is heavily restricted, so you may not get the accommodation. You may even lose a bedroom. And all that hits the bottom line when it comes to auction day.
Yeah, 100% it does, and especially if you're doing a side-by-side dual occupancy, everything's got to sort of get even skinnier, like they're reasonably skinny by nature, some of them anyway. So yeah, to lose, you might even lose a metre, that's means all your bedrooms are suddenly smaller now, and it's a totally different feel. And yeah, you could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars off your resale.
And that again comes down to the market. If the market's a bit soft and you just need a few things going your way, you've got to get everything right. And if you do lose a bedroom, or if all your bedrooms upstairs are only 3 metres wide and you've got one narrow hallway all the way down the back of the house, you're going to cut off a few buyers, and all you need to do is cut off that one buyer who's going to compete with the other buyer to drive your price up and actually get a good return.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So we've spoken about sort of overlays and zonings and those sorts of things, talking about actual site restrictions on site, like slope and easements and shadowing and things like that. What's the overarching sort of, I guess, play here? And if you can get that right, it should keep you flying straight.
The numbers, the feasibility.
I know you love your numbers, Gav.
Yeah, look, honestly, if it's you can tick all the boxes in the world, but with the build costs at the moment, the way they are, and the market sentiment the way it is, particularly in our state, even nationally now, you've got to get your numbers right. And I guess if you're a developer in, say, Perth, right, for example, you've still got the increased cost for building. The market's been going crazy. You think, oh wow, it's Christmas, and lucky for them it has been, But they're also now, if you're a developer over there now looking at a site, you're buying a site that may have been worth 500 grand, 2 or 3 years ago, but now it's going to cost you 800 grand, even more, I've heard, right? So in that example, your build cost is the same pretty much. You're buying the land a lot higher, so you're going to need those extra resales. But it may be Perth, not sure, but Sydney, for example, as well, who have had a really good run. They've topped out, and in some of these major cities where you've had a run of 2 or 3 years of 10% increases, all of a sudden it's topped out and they're talking about a 5% decrease. So if you're tight on that development or that feasibility study, and then you go to sell in 2 years and all of a sudden you find, hey, look, it's not Christmas anymore and we've got to sell 10% under where I thought I was going to be, that's all your profit gone.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Gav. The numbers don't lie, and getting the right numbers in there are super important, and getting current numbers and accurate numbers in there, it's going to help guide you. It's going to help guide you through, and that's, again, putting the right team around you to make sure that you are doing the right due diligence, and how big the dwellings are you're going to get on there, because that's going to drive how much it's going to cost. That's going to drive resales, speaking to local agents and getting a real good guide on what you do have. And even we were chatting earlier, the location you've got it in, because don't think because that's there and that's there that you can genuinely go off that. You might be in an inferior location, you might be in a superior location. It's getting into the weeds. Yeah,
we've spoken about that before, where I might be looking at a suburb, say maybe something like Hyatt, for example, right? And you've got some resales there to 2.2 mil plus, and then you've got some that are 1.7. And look, quite often, yes, it's a better product, but there's a lot more to it than just that, So you got to look at the site location, like the exact site location. How far are you from the activity centre? How far are you from the train station? How far are you from maybe a public housing development versus your comparison? So that might not necessarily be, it might be a neighbourhood comparison or a suburb comparison. But when you're talking about auction day and the people who are buying it, do the buyers see that as a comparison? Am I going to get the same lifestyle living there versus here? What am I looking for? Do I need to have walking distance to the school for my kids? So all of those things need to be taken into account.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Gav. And that's dialing it right in, because like you said, when things are a bit tighter, it's finding those, that little edge here and there. It's finding the block that's a bit flatter. It's not going to cost you much because of the slope, or it's finding that site that's slightly better orientation or slightly better street feel. All these little things are dialing the numbers either in your favour or out of your favour.
Well, if a site hits your desk, right, and you think, wow, this ticks all the boxes, but it's 100 grand under sort of, I guess, what I expected it to be, there's probably a reason for that. So driving past it and seeing how flat it is and how beautiful that house next door and that one there, and I think, this is unreal. Probably is unreal. So that's the thing, right? So what is it? What's the reasons? Because the reason that is underpriced or seems underpriced today is the same reason why buyers are looking for townhouses in 2 years' time. They're going to be asking that same question. Well, maybe it's really low because it's got an SBO on it. All of a sudden you can't get the build on you want, or it might just be the area. Maybe there's something about the area that draws that back, and you can't see it when you're driving past because all you're seeing is the dollars. You're thinking, here we go, this is unreal. But you got to dig a bit deeper. I had a site sent to me the other day, close to activity zone, actually in height, probably why I raised it. Quiet little street. And it's because it's close to the activity centre, there's quite a few examples where developers have bought 2 blocks and they've done multi-storey, 2 to 3 levels, 15 apartments. Really nice, subtle, not too overpowering. But this block was west facing, and I just did a bit of research on the blocks behind it because it's only 1 street away, but it's still 130 metres to the train station. So the zoning allows that sort of development, and both of those had sold mid last year. So around the same time. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the council and say, hey, what's going on with these? Or call the agent who sold them and say, ask him what's the intention of this buy, or was it the same buyer? And if it was, and they're going to build a 3-story apartment block right there, that apartment block's going to block my afternoon sun, and all those people are going to be looking into the backyard. So the townhouses that probably I thought I was going to get maybe, 1.7, 1.8 for, maybe they're worth 150 grand less, because as soon as you go into your beautiful living area, you open the back door and you're looking up at a 3-story apartment block and everyone's there just waving at you saying, hey, welcome to the neighbourhood. So they're thinking, I'm probably going to buy the one down the road for 100 grand more because I'm got the same product, but I don't get the new neighbours. Yeah,
100%. And you could, on face value, be saving yourself 100K on a land purchase, but you could be costing yourself 100, 150K times 2, assuming a dual occupancy, on the way back out. So having a net effect of, a couple hundred grand in the negative.
Yeah, you've really got to look into the area you're buying into and try and work out what other developers might be doing, why it is underpriced if it is, and just try and work out exactly how that's going to impact your buyers at the other end. In a good market, you might have 5 people competing at the auction, and out of that, 2 people think, I don't mind the 3-story apartment at the back because I've got 100 metres to the train station. So they're going to compete, and you might do all right. But in a soft market, you've got one person competing with the vendor, competing with you.
And they understand the market they're in, and people are much more critical in a tough market.
And that can take tens and tens of thousands of dollars off your resale.
Yeah, no, I love it, Gav. Definitely some gold in there on what to look for and traps to avoid, and how to get the best out of your development journey, and making sure that you can maximize each and every development you do.
Look, in sort of 3 to 5 years in this state at least, you might be thinking, how can you not make money out of development? All of a sudden prices are up X amount, build costs have stayed pretty much where they are. It's easier to get plans through the council. It's just every development site is worth having a closer look at because it's so much easier to find profit. But 9 times out of 10, it is very, very difficult.
It's difficult, so you got to find your edge. Gav, awesome, mate. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Look forward to it.
Awesome. If you're serious about property development and want to go deeper, here's how we can help. First, join the Little Fish Network. It's our free community where developers share real projects, strategies, and insights every day. The link's below. And if you need a site, we can source and secure the right development opportunity for you through our buyer's agent service. And if you want access to me, I offer one-on-one mentoring, so you've got me in your corner when you need it. And if you want it done for you, our expert team handles end-to-end project management. And if you're ready to move, book a call with me below and we can map out the best path forward for you and your project. And if you're still here, I appreciate you sticking around right to the end. Do me a favor, give the video a hype and a like and drop a comment. I read and reply to them all. Really helps the channel and helps us keep creating this stuff for free. I'm Peter Kelly. Until the next one, see you at the top.